So Lionel Messi, basically the equivalent of soccer Jesus, as I'm starting to call him at this point, has led Inter Miami to a Leagues Cup win. Every single game that Lionel Messi now has played for Inter Miami has been a win. Only two at this point went to a shootout in the Leagues Cup. Every single one, they won. My question to you guys right now, and this is, so I got hit with a bet the other day. I made the bet that Lionel Messi can take Inter Miami into the MLS playoffs, despite the fact that, as you can see, they are the worst team right now in Major League Soccer. It's a friendly bet, $20 if you know Tom. I think some of you guys know Tom. He took that bet.
I believe I saw this exchange on Facebook.
Yeah.
Or at least some of it.
I'm doubling down on the belief that right now, despite the fact that Inter Miami is literally the worst team in the East right now in Major League Soccer, that team can actually make the playoffs. And in the process, make me $20. Now, Lionel Messi has led Inter Miami to a Leagues Cup from nowhere. You know, that team has won 7 straight games, including the Leagues Cup final in a penalty shootout, which honestly got really kind of exciting for a while.
That was nuts.
That was insane. And, in the chat we were talking about the fact that, they had the one match that went 16 rounds. We were starting to wonder if it was going to hit that. Dimas, I'm going to go with
this one goes to 11.
Yeah, exactly. This one goes to 11. Dimas, I bet Tom Karwacki $20 that Inter Miami can make the playoffs. Am I insane?
No, and I'm going to tell you why. And I told this to JD. They're not only going to make the playoffs; they just got to make it in. They could finish, I think, 7th, right? 7th is they
could win play in tournament. So they have
the 8-9 play-in thing that
not only they could make the playoffs, they could win the cup. Because that's how good this guy is, even if he's 36 years old. And not because he's such a great player. He makes other people better.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just telling you from my background, I have followed him since 2008. Ever since I was a coach with my daughter, and then she got me into soccer.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a Barcelona fan when he won the first Champions League. And on success after that, the ups and downs with the coaches, with Real Madrid, with the changes. But here's one key thing when you have to talk about Messi. If you go into it, if he becomes in your inner circle from a teammate standpoint, if he trusts you, forget it. You're in, and he's going to trust you for life. Case in point, I'm just going to give you going back history. When they brought in Zlatan Ibrahimovic to Barcelona, everyone knows Zlatan.
Mm-hmm. The Croatian superstar.
Exactly. He lasted, and he's a superstar on his own. I mean, he's one of my favorite players of all time. But there was no trust between them. He lasted 1 year in Barcelona.
I can see that.
He lasted 1 year. Scott, you do reporting for NY, New York City. Remember David Villa?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
David Villa was a teammate.
Mm-hmm.
He came from Valencia, became a teammate of Messi in Barcelona. I think they won one Champions League between them, as teammates. But I was there at a game in Barcelona where Messi, they won like 1-0, and he screamed into the face of Villa, like the worst I've ever seen. He didn't trust him. And this is Villa, who was just a player on his own. He's one of the greatest players from Spain. Then you go to the other end when Neymar came in and Luis Suarez. They became like brothers. They were unstoppable. That was the greatest front line I've ever seen in the history of the game. Why? Suarez's wife was from Barcelona, so they had a connection there. Neymar idolized Messi, and he did anything what Messi said. So they connected. If they do that, they're unstoppable. Now let's go into Miami. He's already connected with the guy from Joseph Martinez.
Yes.
He was from Atlanta. United, he was one of the best players, and something happened. I don't know what's that, injuries and so forth. They've already connected like brothers.
Oh yes, I've seen it firsthand.
You see
when
the
you were
Taylor
when you were
kid.
covering the Union at Subaru Park last week.
You see the Taylor kid. He's a rookie, like he's a newbie. He's already trusting Taylor from the front line, and then you add. Let's bring in some old teammates. Sergio Busquets, who's one of the greatest midfielders of the Spanish national team. He holds that back line, amazing. Then you have Jordi Alba on one side who makes those runs, and it hasn't changed from his time in Barcelona or his time in the national team. If he has that connection with them already and he trusts them, I don't see anybody beating them for the MLS Cup. Now, that's great short term. Long term is a whole other story we could discuss. But I could see them. You shouldn't have bet $20. You should have bet $2,000. Because
well, I have that right now. Writer strike's happening. I haven't got 2,000.
What I'm telling you is they'll go into the playoffs. They could win the cup, hands down.
Interesting. Okay. And additionally with something like this too, having only come in the last 2 months, you've already seen what's already happened. I mean, somebody made the argument, JD, one of your old college alumni, Mike Rucker, disagreed with the comment. And he said that eventually teams are going to figure out how to adjust. And in the end, they will not make the playoffs because they're too far below. I think personally,
they're only 12 points out. It's not that. It's not like they're 12 points behind. There's DC United is currently in the 9th slot, the last playoff spot.
32 points, yeah, and Miami's at 18 points, so they're 14 actually. But
okay, so all right, so I must have.
They have two, but they have 2 games. So, but Miami has 2 games.
Right, but 12 points, 14 points. They have 12 games left. 3 a win is 3 points.
Yes,
they can close that gap pretty easily. And to pick up with what Sammy D said, this is not just Messi in Miami. It's Messi, it's Busquets, it's Jordi Alba, it's the coach Tata Martino, who is coach of the Argentinian national team and also coached him in Barcelona briefly. Where they had a bad season, where they only won the Spanish Superliga Cup. But since they didn't go anywhere in Champions League, that's considered a failure. It's Yankees like standards for the. I'm not joking. Like
we love the Yankees, here, don't we?
Yeah, and so really. While yes, as I call it, the Messi circus that I saw firsthand, where one of the writers that I'm friendly with, who also covers the team for another site, he said that it took him trying to drive to the stadium between the various detours and just the amount of traffic. It took him an hour to get from the bridge to the parking spot.
And how long is that trip normally?
It would be about 10 minutes, depending on normal amounts of pregame traffic.
Yeah.
And the traffic was stopped dead so much that the some individual entrepreneurs, let's say, were walking through the traffic, just holding up Messi shirts for sale. So
independent entrepreneurs, that's a nice way of saying it.
Yeah.
It fell off the back of a truck.
Right. So just this kind of and reading between the lines, Daniel Gazdag actually did say that they were kind of scared of that lineup. Like this is very intimidating. There's definitely dream team vibes from this team, but the Barcelona Super Friends, as I started calling them now, Messi is the lead here, but to me, this sounds a lot more like another group of players that took their talents to South Beach a few years back. Brandon,
yes. Is that the cue to bring it over to Brandon, who's a Miami Heat fan?
Yeah, exactly. So that's really what we have here. Messi is LeBron and Pele rolled into one right now. And you have that tight inner circle. Tata Martino was the coach of the Argentinian national team and coached Messi there. He was the first coach of Atlanta United when they came into the league in 2017 and won the second year of existence. And who was on that team? Joseph Martinez.
Interesting. And additionally, also having seen what Inter Miami did at Subaru Park, which is historically one of the toughest stadiums to play at on the road.
Yes.
Presuming in this case, most likely, if Inter Miami is going to get in, all likelihood they're going to be going road games all the way through. Showing what they did against,
won't stop.
Yeah, exactly. And as a result,
doesn't matter where they could be playing on the moon. It doesn't matter.
Sweeps 11, and they'll still figure out a way to take it. But no, I think in this case, I think an MLS Cup win is plausible. I'm just, in this case, like I said, it's a $20 bet for me about whether or not they're just going to make the playoffs. So weirdly enough, for bragging rights, I'm kind of hoping that they sort of do.
Let's pull up Miami's schedule.
Yeah,
and,
go ahead.
I would like to then ask,
please,
a good question here. So at the time of Messi's arrival, Miami was where in the standings? Rock bottom?
Last.
Yes.
They've only played
absolute rock bottom.
Yes, they've only played in the League's Cup, so they have not played MLS.
Okay.
I know soccer.
The League's Cup is a mid-season. Sorry, Scott.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Because I figured out a way to translate this for Brandon.
Watch Ted Lasso. They explain it.
It's also.
I still have yet to watch it.
Also, I think the NBA should take notes. This is how you do a mid-season tournament.
Oh, God. Even baseball should be able to do, and MLB would make it interesting on something like that because it ties into, Brandon, what you've said about the shorter schedule. So it's kind of like a small season within the major season with its own trophy.
And it's kind of, and the format is kind of like World Cup meets March Madness.
Yeah,
which was actually pretty cool. And for this tournament, which starts with 47 teams combined between MLS and the Liga MX, the Mexican Pro League. And they have some very talented teams down there as well. It's also a different style. It's very physical. Think NBA in the 90s, like really like smack you around, type of play.
And that's how the Mexican teams play.
Yes, and I've now watched like 5 different teams, like 5 or 6 teams. So it isn't something that's isolated to just one team. Just it varies depending on the squad. Like Querétaro, for example. The Union played them in the second group stage game, and they blasted them 5-1. Querétaro then kind of went on a St. Peter's-like run, where I think they finished last in the Liga MX last year. So they finished last or close to the bottom, and they kind of went on a run in this tournament, and they made it to the quarterfinals and played the Union again, and that was a hard fought 2-1 game, absolute garbage officiating, and the Union needed a last minute goal to advance. So you have a bit of Cinderella possibilities with it,
but now
who knows what?
Here's my question then. If let's just say he goes, and first off, forget LeBron. He comes in, goes on this Brock Purdy run, never lost. Little LeVar Ball reference there. But okay, can I not sit here and say if Messi, Inter Messi, takes this squad all the way to
I use that as a headline.
And you should. And in terms of MLS win the MLS championship, does that say more about him as a personal player, or is it almost kind of not a criticism, but kind of an
indictment of the MLS?
Yeah, because look, you guys have been clamoring on how MLS over the years is evolving in terms of the quality of play and popularity. And then you have Messi, who by no way is in his quote unquote prime.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Would you guys say?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay,
He's
so
He's on the
he's
downside of his career,
Okay.
but he also did just win a World Cup last year.
yeah, so right, okay, so but that's fair. That's fair. But then does that can I say, like, I mean, can't people kind of start to look at the MLS the way they used to? Like, can't there be a kind of like a 2 or 3 steps forward, 2 steps, or 1 step forward, 2 step backwards kind of a concept or kind of an idea?
I think it's too many steps backwards, but maybe half a step back.
Yeah, I shared similar concerns. Sammy,
or back where you originally were. 1 step forward, take the step back.
Yeah,
I think it's more forward than back.
Yeah. Sammy, go ahead on this.
I think because again, it's
that way he comes in and never loses and just steamrolls the entire league.
Yeah.
Again, because his influence on the pitch is different than, let's say, I'll tell you right now, if Ronaldo came to the MLS mid-season, he wouldn't have had the same impact as Messi would have.
Not like this.
No, I would.
If Neymar Jr. would have come MLS mid-season, he wouldn't have had the impact that Messi did, because those players are more about themselves, and as a result, they won't bring other players with them. They won't bring. They're saying right now that Luis Suarez, he got out of his contract in Uruguay. Is it Uruguay? And there's a chance he's going to come to play with intermiami.
I'd heard that. I was wondering.
That's the influence. That's the influence. So the step back will be once he leaves. To me, because
and also
short-term the marketing. You got the World Cup that's going to come up is in the U.S. You have a face for that, for the World Cup.
Copa America as well.
You have Copa America. You have a face for it. Short-term, MLS is going to make the most money that you can imagine from the subscription standpoint, stadium, marketing, and so forth.
And they're still
half of Argentina just bought Apple TV subscriptions.
Yes.
And they still have the plan to have it in multiple cities, right?
Yes.
Yes.
17 different cities.
Okay, so that's
which I think which I've said before, I think a genius move. Because
it's kind of aggressive marketing.
Exactly. All of North America can basically have something close-ish to where they live. So it's not like Qatar has one location. I mean, if you're in, like, say, for example, the Midwest, you got St. Louis as a possibility. If you're out west, you have all of the coast. You can make a reasonable trip and see the World Cup as a once-in-a-lifetime event.
World Cup is in about, I believe it's, I forget if it's 12 or 14 cities between U.S., Canada, and Mexico.
Which means everybody should realistically have no more than a 4 or 5 hour drive to any.
Maybe Montana might be 8 or 10, but
for the places where there are people.
Yeah, depending on the traffic, but
really, I got 15 minutes. It's going to be in MetLife Stadium.
Shit, people do that for
and 20 minutes for me over to Philly. But also there's Kansas City, there's LA, there's
Seattle's one of the teams. Toronto's one of the teams. So there's a lot of different options available.
Foxborough.
There's a ton of options and a ton of possibilities. The analogy that I came up with, and I realized this the other day, when Lionel Messi signed with Inter Miami, he was 35 years old. Now he's 36. When Wayne Gretzky signed with the Rangers, he was 35 and started playing at 36. So it is the same kind of thing where you have, in one case, soccer Jesus, and then you have hockey Jesus. But the only difference is that this would be the same kind of thing, I think, in hockey, if instead of signing for the Rangers, Wayne Gretzky went to, say, the AHL. Because in this case, MLS to me has always been kind of like AAA hockey. AAA soccer to a worldwide stage. So in this case, you're seeing one of the best of the best now in a league a little bit below what he's been used to. So the fact that he has now 10 goals in, I think, 6 starts and sub, I think is his numbers right now, but 10 goals and I think 3 assists is his numbers. You're seeing that age be damned because it's a slightly lower league. The idea obviously is to make it come up to the point where it's going to reach, some of the European ones, or even for God's sakes, the Saudi Arabian ones at some point. Is he going to be enough on that? I don't think so. But I think it's certainly possible that it might in the next 5 years, especially after World Cup, that you might be able to start getting the younger ones. I mentioned before, Kylian Mbappe. some of the players that are in their younger prime coming over here is an option, especially if Apple TV is like, here, have a bag of money.
Very possible. Very
Mhm.
possible. If Messi decided to come here versus Saudi Arabia,
Mhm.
and you hear Ronaldo mouthing off, "Oh, we're gonna be a better league than MLS." He had to say that.
Sure.
He had to. He had no choice to make that.
Look at Neymar's contract over there. He's basically there's stipulations in his contract that he's basically a paid social media shill for the country, where like he gets bonuses of like mentioning, like every time he mentions Saudi Arabia tourism, he gets a bonus for,
because that was the only place they were going to take
He's
him.
literally human product placement.
Yep. That's the only place they were gonna take him. MLS,
and they just threw a bunch of money at him, so he said, "Okay, sure." And Neymar did the same thing, and that is, and as Sammy said, that's the difference between the style of player, and also Messi had. I read he was close to the people at Apple and helped the MLS Apple deal get done behind the scenes, or like through mutually connected folks. So this has been, and he's besties with David Beckham. So yes, this has been set up for a while. One of the things that you see in hindsight, like, oh, I can now in retrospect see the breadcrumbs that led up to here. And while yes, in the short term it does show the talent disparity in MLS, as Brandon said, I kind of had similar feelings, but also this is great for growing the game long term, especially with bigger events on the world stage. The MLS and soccer in America in general is one of the greatest untapped markets, and is a market that advertisers want demographically, like a younger market. And they're like, the average American soccer fan is about 20 years younger than the average baseball fan, or something along those lines. This is the market where the money is.
Did you know that they said on the radio today, Intermiami has more Instagram followers than any NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL team? Think about that.
Yeah.
Established organizations, and they've already surpassed it.
Yeah.
And this is a team that they only came into existence in 2020. They've only been around for a few years, and this is also the direct result of the last time this happened, when Beckham came over to the LA Galaxy in 2007. As part of that contract, they said you can get an expansion team down the road for $25 million. Yeah. David Beckham's $25 million investment is now worth over $1 billion overnight. This is where growth is in dollars for everybody involved, and at a better price point that fans can afford.
And here's the scary part.
You get the entire season for less than $100. No blackouts, no garbage that all of the other leagues are dealing with.
Yeah. But here's the scary part. It took Beckham 5 years with the Galaxy to win the first MLS Cup. It took Messi.
And Messi might do it in a few months.